Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Friends. I'm Meredith, and it's my opinion that, we're all changing right now in the world. I think probably most people would agree. What I see is some people are changing and learning, and other people are changing with kind of maybe just fear and uncertainty in these times. I think it's both, really. And I think that the more that we can kind of get on that bandwagon of things can be better and we can be better and we can do some good things in this world and feel very fulfilled and help others at the same time, then life can get very good even during these times. So I am really delighted today to introduce you to what I would call just an extraordinary change maker. And Brandon Santiago is one who's been through hard times, has had to overcome different things in his life, and somehow, and we're going to learn, just went beyond all of the negative. And I assume, Brandon Santiago, that you really changed from the inside out. And things started to happen, and there's been so much success in your life. So and I'm thrilled to be here to get to interview you. Brandon is actually now the president of the Peace Studio, and I think many of you might have heard me talk about the Peace Studio, and we've had a couple of people involved with the Peace Studio. In fact, one of our founders, and I've been involved with it for a few years on the board. Brandon is, when I start telling you just some of his titles, you're going to be like really wowed. He's an executive director, served as an executive director in multiple internationally known organizations where he's developed innovative programs and creative partnerships. I'm reading all of it because there's so much at the intersection of storytelling, media, and culture. He's a San Francisco raised Puerto Rican, he's very proud to say, and he should be, artist, cultural strategist, sorry about that, filmmaker and producer with a global presence as an educator, performer, and speaker. And we're going to talk about his life and what he's been through. And it seems to me that everything, Brandon, that you have been through, you have gone on to help others overcome, and a lot of young people. Would you say, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Thrilled
Meredith, it's such a pleasure to be here. You're one of my favorite humans, and I get a chance to, partner with you in the work that we do. But also, I love talking to you. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for that. And I felt that way a few years ago now. Was it like a year ago, 2 years ago, that we did meet in Miami, and they kept gonna love Brandon Santiago. You're going to love him. And we had dinner, you, me, and John Yearwood, journalist, Politico, who's also on the board of the Peace Studio. And I think we sat on the rooftop of a restaurant. I cannot remember the name.
We did.
Sat there and you gave us all your ideas and your plans for the future. And it was very, very exciting. And I felt very enthusiastic. So I wanted to just start with, you are what I would say you're a man on a mission, right? Can we maybe kind of focus on or pinpoint what that means to be on a mission? And I know it's about doing good and creating change, but what is that mission?
That's a great question. And I think, my mission for the past almost 20 years, time flies, has been to create spaces and containers for folks to share their story. For me, art and story radically changed my life. I grew up in San Francisco, and I dropped out of high school a few times. I dropped out of high school as a sophomore and again as a senior. And I remember getting the news as a senior being told that I don't have enough credits to graduate. And I tried that year my hardest. It was probably the only year of high school that I really tried to do it. And I had dug myself too deep of a hole. But it was my homie, my friend Eric, who's still my best friend to this day. We were going to continuation school together, which is a school that you go to when you're kicked out of a traditional high school. And he told me he had a poetry slam that he was going to attend. And I didn't even know what a poetry slam was. But I remember walking into the San Francisco Opera House, which, I'd been living in the city my entire life. I'd never been to the Opera House. Beautiful, huge theater, ceilings to the sky, 3,500 person theater. And I remember walking in, and I walked in as my friend Eric was entering on stage to share his poem. And that moment profoundly changed my life. Watching him share his story and watching 3,000 people listen was the first time I had heard people like us being listened to, and it changed my life forever. At that moment, I went out to the lobby and I said, "Who's putting this on? Let me put away chairs and pick up boxes. Let me just be a part of what this is," and that kind of changed my life forever, really.
That is an extraordinary story. It really
Mm,
is. I always wonder, it's just your good fortune in your life, Not everybody
yeah,
has those moments, but if they keep trying, maybe you just hadn't given up yet, and you didn't just say, I can't manage, I can't get through school, I don't know what I'm going to do. You didn't seem to have that kind of just fear of the world, of facing the world or anything. There must have been something inside you that said, let me keep going, right? Until I find myself. Yes, or
yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think everybody has that innate feeling of there's something more than what they're currently experiencing. And for me, it was a lot of the people around me. It was my mentors. It was folks who had patience with me, who were willing to sit with me, not give up on me. That really kind of kept me motivated in whatever way I was. But I think it was also seeing the needs in my community, like seeing the folks, my peers, folks younger than me, a little bit older than me, all looking for spaces to share, build, create. That really was a motivating factor for sure.
so it was what you saw and what you experienced. But again, to me, you didn't lose hope. There was something in you that just said, I can help be part of the community and maybe create some change.
Yeah,
And
I get.
but
Yeah,
you weren't sure yet, right? You didn't yet really have a sense of yourself, and that can take time, doesn't it? Take time to figure oneself out.
yeah, I get that from my mom. You know what I mean? My
Yeah.
mom would had a relentless optimism. We didn't
Mm.
have it easy growing up. It was her, me, and my sister, single parent home, and my mama worked at times two, sometimes three jobs. And no matter what, there was always this optimism or hope that things could get better, and things did get better. We had, despite times that weren't easy, we had, really good moments, and so
Beautiful.
that relentless not wanting to give up, I definitely credit that to her.
Wow, that's amazing. And we're going to meet your mother on video or on the program in about a minute. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and so why don't we meet your mother right now, and then
Mm.
they'll see you and talking about her and the effect that she's had.
My mother is a San Francisco summer. All right. My mother is a San Francisco summer. And I mean that in the best way possible. She is one part beauty and two part strength. A cold breeze on a summer day just the way we like it. She is all sofrito and frying pan. She is the best Puerto Rican food this side of San Juan, and she loves with one hand open and the other hand a clenched fist. She did her best to raise a son in a city that is known for its particular brand of crazy. My mother is bursting concrete skyline. She is floating fragile fog, a bright harvest moon, gold and glowing, hanging low between twin peaks. She is my lighthouse on California's coast, always guiding me home. My mama just moved a couple of hours up north, but she raised me in San Francisco, Lakeview, at 358 Judson Avenue, where we learned to laugh when things got hard, where we fought over the last pastele, and where her door was always open with food for anyone who needed it. I was the only man of my mother's house even after I left to try and build something of my own. And we lived in that city long enough to call it our home. And my mom has worked at the same job since before she knew the names of her children. She has always been more root than tumbleweed. Planted firmly between bay views, mama is as loyal as sun-cracked mornings, as consistent as twilight. Every night after she prayed for me, she'd tell me that she loved me, even on those nights when I was too brittle with bitterness and anger to say it back. And that
Unbelievable. I've watched it a few times.
No.
Brendan, it is just beyond moving. And what it says to me is love conquers all, doesn't it? You were
Absolutely.
loved, and that's more important than many, many opportunities people have in life. Just knowing that you're loved. That changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think love, especially from adults, is probably the most important thing in a young person's life. There was a study that came out from the Wallace Foundation a few years ago, and it said that best case scenario is this: a young person has 50 positive adults or positive interactions with adults in their life. That's the best case scenario to optimize a young person's potential. However, they said that even if that young person has one positive adult in their life, that can radically transform their life. And so for me, I got a chance to have a few. My mom was definitely one of them. And that poem is about her for sure. But the rest of the poem is really about the struggle that we had trying to find housing in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, and the things that my mom had to do to make sure that she kept the roof over my sister and Maya's head. And watching that, yeah, it definitely gives me determination and hope that no matter what the circumstances are, if you persist, you can accomplish great things.
Mm, beautifully said. And
Mm.
that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's just being one who overcomes obstacles. A lot of people, they just don't feel that way. I feel that they're dealt with some bad situations that happen in life. They get hurt, things don't work. With you, I get the feeling that you somehow knew that you had some talent that had not yet emerged, right? This poem is beautiful. It's just
Mm.
absolutely beautiful. And there's a lot more. You have so many of them. And I don't know if I mentioned that you've also performed at the Kennedy Center. And there's another place that's, let me think, as a storyteller was, on TED
Mm.
Talks. You've been on,
Yeah.
countless, just different places that you've been seen and been heard. So I would imagine that a lot of people are seeing you and meeting you, and they get it, right? They get what your message is all about.
I hope. I think, yeah, and even for me, the idea that there was something special, I don't know if I necessarily always felt that. I think what it was is, again, it was the folks in my community who reflected that. And I'll say that there are so many of my friends who were as talented, if not more intelligent, um, that didn't get the same opportunities that I did. And so I think a part of it is also me. Just grateful for the folks who I had in my life who continued to push me, even when I was a knucklehead for a while there as a young person, but to your point, not giving up really does help, but having a community that encourages having safe and brave spaces to grow and learn was probably the most important thing in my life.
Mm. So today, given that there is, again, this hopelessness and a feeling of that things are
Mm,
getting worse, and, we hear it all the time. And, I know being a student with the Brahma Kumaris, we're even urged not to talk about it, not to keep
mm.
focusing on it, but you have to see it. So what do you say to young people? And we're going to actually see something in a few minutes, but what do you say to people, especially young people, that who are just really feeling hopeless and feeling like life is not good to me? What do you say?
Yeah, that's one, I try and listen first and
Mhm.
understand that what they're experiencing in their life feels real, and their circumstances probably aren't always great. But for me, I'm always like, hey, you're my hope. These
Mhm.
young folks are the hope. They are the reason why I'm optimistic is when I see them and hear them and see their relentlessness, their optimism, their creative ideas. And so for me, it's really about creating spaces in which they can thrive and grow. And for me, every single moment and opportunity that I get a chance to work with young people, it feels like I'm marching closer towards my mission. And there are so many incredible, talented young folks who don't always have the opportunities, but I think for me, that's a part of this work, especially at the P Studio, is really trying to create spaces where we say talent is equally distributed, opportunity often isn't. And so trying to create as many opportunity and resources for young people to find their talent, to find their potential, to unlock their potential. So for me, they are my hope. And I would say to them, if they feel hopeless, um, and I've seen young folks feel that. For me, it's if you can provide them a space where they can feel safe, usually that hopelessness turns into optimism.
Mm. Makes me feel even more, just optimistic just listening to
Mm,
you. Uh,
mm,
I know that the way that you do this is through the arts. And
mm,
again, you are a big advocate and leader. Uh, in the arts, in terms of the arts being able to transform and change people's lives so they can go on to help others change their lives, right? So maybe you could speak a little bit about that because, well, I'm looking at myself. Not everybody has, such talent like you do. And I've been to some of the Peace Studio events in Miami, and you're going to be heading it now that you are the president and everything. But, and I see so much talent, but they are chosen, these people. These are select people that, they're already known to have something, have some creativity, or not some, they're all pretty creative, whether it's writing or singing or dancing or, something. So is that what you're on the lookout for, finding people like that?
Yeah, I think it starts totally. I think it starts with their story. And I think everybody has a story. Everyone has a story. And if you can create a space in which folks can learn, build, feel more confident sharing their story, I think that's where art comes out of. It starts with the self. There's a phrase that we use in the education world called life as primary text. And it's the idea that if you can start with someone's lived experience as the primary resource or text for their art, then everyone can be an artist or a poet. I wasn't classically trained. I had friends who went to, grad school and got MFAs. For me, I just told my story through the experiences that I had. And I do believe that everyone has that. Now, there are some incredibly talented young artists in Miami for sure. And I'm honored when I get to share space with them. But I really, truly believe that your story is something that's accessible to everybody.
Again, beautifully said. Your story, it requires honesty, requires looking within to figure out what your story is. I don't think and I was working for PBS, my entire life. And it was how many years later that I was working there that I began to figure out my own story. I was always looking at other people and doing shows, and I hadn't really gone inside. And then when I started meditating, honestly, things started to change. I started to look inside and see what I liked, some things that I didn't like. But that was when something, it's almost like when the light within went on somewhat, is when my life started to really change. So I'm wondering, does it require that introspection for people, especially young people, to transform and to maybe get away from the negative into the much more, not just beyond positive, really. It's really about life affirming, and celebrating and purpose. It's a lot of purpose, isn't it? Having purpose in life.
That's a great question. I think you're absolutely right. I think 100% that if you could, one of the first things I do if I'm facilitating a workshop, if I'm teaching a class, I've gotten a chance to teach at the high school I dropped out of. I've gotten a chance to teach at universities and colleges, and it's really all the same thing. When you create a space for younger people, a young person, a student to write about themselves with no constraints, you try and create a space in which there are no rules. This is your moment to reflect and share on your personal and lived experiences. Just that simple moment of that introspection through writing is always transformative. I've never experienced, if you can create the elements for someone to write, I've never experienced someone not in some way being transformed. It doesn't take a lot for someone, you really just need pen, paper, and a couple of questions. And we try and start there. We try and start with, here's a question. Let's see what you say. Free write for, 10, 15 minutes, and let's see what your spirit or your heart has to say. Sometimes I say it's kind of like a well, because there are times where when you pump a well, that first water is a little brown or muddy, but eventually you get to that clear, pure water. And oftentimes it's similar with the young person. You got to give them the space to share their hearts and feelings, and then eventually that clean water starts to shine through.
So it really is a healing process, isn't it? And there's been a lot of things stuffed in people, and I'm sure with young people too, is like things that you've been holding, suffering, anger, maybe seeing difficult times in your life that you have to clear. And I'm thinking of one of your past people who did go, an artist who did go through the Artist is Catalyst program, which is now you've taken over in Miami, and you worked on it in LA, right? And there's going to be one in LA. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah. We had our first one last year in Los Angeles, and we'll be
Okay.
doing another one in LA as well.
So, I mean, I'm thinking of this young artist that I met at one of them,
Mm,
and he had gone through seeing a terrible thing in life, like the murder of
mm,
his friend. He was they were 6 years old or something, and
mm.
he was totally traumatized. I mean, you can imagine, anybody would be, right?
Wow.
And then what happened was his parents, I think his mother had the really good sense to say that, he needs therapy. And he
Mm,
went through some kind of therapy, which was very spiritual, actually. I'm not saying
mm.
religious, but more spiritual, more
Yeah,
meditative. And he changed and he was able to heal himself. And now he's an amazing artist. And you probably know who he is, or you'll meet him. Um, and he's just so positive, and there's nothing
mm,
heavy about him, having seen something like
mm,
that. So I guess
mm.
we all need to do a little cleansing, don't we? Or a lot of cleansing to get to that point.
Yeah.
You're saying it starts with just writing about yourself.
At least for me, that's been the antidote. Is so many when I feel sort of disconnected from myself, or when I feel that life or the world is getting heavy, it has been writing since I've been 17, 18 years old. That's been the tool that I come back to. It's accessible. It's easy. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to create time for it, but for me, writing has absolutely been that tool to remind me of the hope and the power that exists within inside.
Mm, that's it. You just
Mm,
really hit it, the power inside. We have this
mm,
power that
totally.
we could go through life and never even know we have it, right? I mean, we're operating
Yes.
on a different kind of energy, almost a forceful kind of energy. Be successful, be like the way other people are, do this, do that, and not knowing ourselves.
And oftentimes trying to survive, I feel like when you're
Oh,
in the space of operating in a survival mode as opposed to gratitude or even hope or optimism. I know for me, spending so much time in that survival instinct was limiting my ability to be able to realize and maximize my own potential.
mm. Well, we're going to see you with your amazing potential right now again.
Yeah.
We have some wonderful video to share of you sharing with others.
Thank you.
So,
My first high school the day before class. And nowadays I wake up to the soft sound of a nostalgic regret playing over my morning prayers. Dear God, thank you for this day and direct my path. Working for a youth development organization, I spend most of my time telling young folks to stay in school. The irony feels like a swift punch to my ego every time I catch myself giving that typical, "I've made those mistakes already" speech. So I've learned to disguise them with phrases like, "Oh homie, school to get you paid," or "all the cuties go to college." He replies with a youthful pessimism. I say, "Look, just don't follow in my footsteps. Learn from the path I've already taken and create your own."
wow, another very powerful message
Mm,
from you.
mm,
So I'm assuming, or I already think that I know just from having met you and seeing you now and talking to you many times, that you always have some kind of a message that those people,
mm.
those young people in the room need to hear.
Yeah, and oftentimes that message is if I was able to transform my life, you can. Trust me. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And that poem was about a particular young man who I was a young teacher. I was teaching at the time, and this young man was probably one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And he was having a hard time staying in school, but he wasn't having a hard time learning. He was a learner, and he was reading books on his own all the time. And there was a conversation that I had with him trying to balance convincing him to stay in school, but also understanding that just because he wasn't fitting in within the educational system doesn't mean he wasn't a valuable student or a learner, because he taught me so much. And just the experiences that you have as a young person in the school system, they're not always positive. But I think the idea is if you can create spaces where young people are learning no matter what. And his name is Celestino. Unfortunately, he ended up passing away a few
Mm.
years ago, but that's who that poem was for and about.
Mm. Are you always in search of, again, like a new way to get your message across and to really convey to, these young people that, again, many of them, right, are just starting out. I don't know if they all are, but they're just starting out. And well, also, do most of them that get chosen to be part of, of the events that you're involved with, are they already creatives? Are they already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are some great questions. I think first, I think always trying to find a new way, or at least connect with them on their terms. But so much of it comes down to storytelling, whether that's through poetry or music or film. Those have been the mediums. It's finding stories and a way to convey story that they can receive. And I think every young person, and I know this might sound a little corny, but I really truly believe that every single young person is creative in some capacity. Oftentimes it's the schooling and the school system that in some ways slowly drains their creativity out of them. But I've never been in spaces with young people who don't have an innate creativity. And I think it's about creating spaces in which they can not only learn and discover their own creativity, but actually use that creativity in some sort of art form. To me, that's been in so many ways the magic bullet. And so many of these young folks who I work with, they do come to the P Studio or they'll come to other organizations, but oftentimes the best thing is to teach them that they can create on their own. They don't necessarily need spaces. Now, there should be spaces for them, but they can create on their own no matter what. And this generation specifically is a generation of creators, and they have agency with all the tools and technology. They're creating things that I would have never dreamed of when I was a kid, which is crazy to say. It's, a long time ago now, but yeah.
Not long ago for you, but
Yeah.
when I look back, I
Cool.
mean, you just didn't have, people coming together and sharing and creating together. And one person that did participate that I talked to, and I said, what did you get out of this, being part of the P Studio program, this artist as catalyst? And he said a sense of community, because I always felt like I was alone, that nobody was like me. He's an incredible musician. And he said, but I didn't have friends like me. And then all of a sudden he meets these people and they're all doing different things, writers, artists, storytellers. I mean, just different things, not even just with words. It could be music, could be anything, right? And they felt like they were part of, almost like, I think in the olden days, it'd be like being part of a sorority or fraternity. I never was like into that myself, but there are people, at least you do feel part of something. And we need to be part of something. So how do you take this? Like, it's an amazing project and the work is successful. And now you are heading it, and you have been heading all kinds of things like this over the years. But how do you take this and get it out almost to society? I'm not even thinking about the world, that's too big in my head right now, the world. But how do you convey this and begin to have an effect on others? I mean, I realize this is an arts idea, but how do people all get this, begin to experience this?
I think it's what you said. It really is through community and through culture. And I think the idea is, I've been talking about this book. I can't stop talking about it. It's called Nexus by Yuval Harari. And it chronicalizes the story of information itself. And one of the things he talks about is architecting ideologies that can be passed on through story. And so for me, at the P Studio, what we're doing is we're trying to reshape what the story is about young artists. And the story is that, to me, young artists are the answer to the problems that we're facing in the world, that the problems and the issues that we're seeing when we turn on the news or the television, that there are solutions, and those solutions lie in the creative imagination of these young artists. And if we create spaces where these young artists can exercise their creative imagination, I think the rest takes care of itself. And so for me, it's really just filling the space up with amazing artists and watching them do their work and building a story around that. And Meredith, you're a part of that story. And that story is that we still care about art and we still care about storytelling. And the more we invest in that, I think that is the elixir or the antidote to some of the divisiveness and the polarization that we're experiencing in the world today.
And maybe to not worrying about, it's kind of like thinking, well, how am I going to make a lot of money? If you're thinking about that, you can't enjoy the process. Or how am I going to, people think, well, how am I going to find a mate? Or, people want all kinds of things that maybe they're not happening, and then they're not happy,
True.
I'm thinking that it's just you're putting something out and you're successful with it, and you see that it's having an effect on people, on the young people who participate. And maybe that's all you need to do. When something is good, people eventually get it, right? People will hear about it. They'll hear somebody changed as a result. And, you know, I have seen that. I've seen that with a lot of things that I've been involved with or that I've watched, seen, you know, in my life. And if you start worrying about, you know, it's almost like worrying about the success of it or how it's going to work, you're going to lose that energy. So just
Yeah, to your point.
so just
It, it,
keep going, right? I mean, keep doing
yeah,
what you believe in.
yeah,
And
and focusing on the internal and the external. There's so many different things that can happen externally that you can't control. But if you're, like you said, focusing on the internal, the hope, the optimism, the peace, the potential that you have inside, it's so much easier to affect change externally when you're really focused on the internal.
beautiful, beautiful. And I actually do love these times, even though in spite of
Mm,
the, you know, the bad things happening. I love them because I do feel, and I've studied this a lot with the Brahma Kumaris and also just knowing
mm.
others that are kind of on this path, you know, that this is the time of transformation. And all we have to do is just be present and we'll be pulled to do things, you know. Uh, I don't know about as much as you. I mean, you are, you know, you're really like a person that can just accomplish a lot. And I've never seen you
Oh,
stressed. I've never
oh my
talking
God.
to you all the times. I know you also do kind of visualizations. Do you prepare or would you be able to lead us into one right now? If you're not, that's okay. Just a few minutes, like a minute of something, a little visual.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I would love to continue to learn from you. But for me, meditation and visualizations have been one of the things that's helped me remain calm and peaceful in turbulent moments. But yeah, maybe I could. If maybe
Sure.
one of the things I learned from actually, her name is Yadira Kopash. She is the person who is our lead curator of the Artists Catalyst program in Miami. But she has you hold up your hand and we'll do a breathing exercise where we're going to trace our fingers. And when we get to the top of our fingers, we're going to take a big inhale. And as we trace our fingers down, we'll exhale and we'll do all five just to sort of calm us down. So I'll show you. So we'll start here and for me, those five deep breaths in just sort of help me calm and ground myself. And then one of the things I would do after that is take a look at two doors in your mind. And one of the doors is filled with the reality, maybe the heartache and the turbulence of the current world, and sitting with that, accepting that. And then the second door is the power and the hope that you see in your community. And if you can sit with both of those things and realize that they're actually more connected than you think, and that the power and the hope can impact the reality or maybe the heartache that you're experiencing, for me, it's something I always come back to and try to come back to on a daily basis is how can I take the hope and the optimism I see in myself and in my community and have that be an impact on the external world and the turbulence that I'm also experiencing. So that's one of the ways that I try and ground myself on the daily.
It's easy to say why you're so successful, Brandon, in all that you
Mm,
do. And this has just
mm,
been a pleasure. I could
mm.
talk with you all day. It's been a pleasure to have you on the program. And as you mentioned, Yadira, right? Yadira, she was
Yeah.
on the program last year because I sat next to her over a year ago at one of your programs and we started talking. I know I was a judge with her at one of the contests for the Peace Studio. And I said, "Oh, would you come on the program?" And so just to hear you mention her name now, that's pretty exciting to me, you know, that she's
She's amazing.
participated. Yeah, she is amazing. She's
Yeah,
amazing. There are these people out there and they're out there, you know, it's not
I
just a few people anymore. Something's happening, you know.
I believe it. I believe
Yeah.
when the darkness gets darker, I think the light gets lighter as well. It happens at the same time often.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for
Mm,
taking the time
mm.
and always a pleasure to get to talk with you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.